Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. So,
Hello.
hello. So, we'll get started just right away because we have a sort of limited time for each person. And I'm going to be really strict about the time just because it is limited. So 8 minutes, I'm going to put on a timer for each person to talk about 8 minutes. When you hear the chiming, so then if you still haven't stopped speaking, then just sort of please wrap up because you want to have some time for me and Michael or other people in the group to respond to your proposal, to give you suggestions and all of that stuff. So, so today we've got, in this order, they will be presenting, we'll be starting off with Elizabeth, and then we'll have Anne, and then Ayatakshi, then Brad, then David, Ruth, Samuel, and lastly, Sharaye. So, Elizabeth, if you're ready, we can start off.
Yes. Do you have capabilities to allow me to screen share?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Do you have capabilities to allow me to screen share?
Sure, absolutely. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So let me try it again. Excellent. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
So as many of you know, I work for the Martin Luther King Center here in Atlanta, Georgia. And one of my roles is as a certified trainer of nonviolence, and the other is as a project manager. And one of the things that I've talked to the executive team about is once that project manager contract is up in June, then I want to take this proposal that I've done here in this class and actually complete this research. So this is this year's 2021 King Holiday observance. This is how we advertised it. The urgency of creating the beloved community. A little bit about me. You all know that my personal business is Debt-Free Degree with Dr. Roz. So I teach students how to graduate fully debt-free. That is, I believe, a form of nonviolence. I just got a text yesterday from a student that said, I just took a job and it has a salary plus bonuses, and I'm going to use all of the bonuses to use for investing. This is a 22-year-old young lady. And how incredible is that she has that option, because she put my practice into she put my plan into practice and was able to graduate fully debt free. Again, also a certified trainer of nonviolence, the project manager for content and learning for the King Center, and proposing the Beloved Community Coalition. So at the King Center, our definition that we use for nonviolence is a love-centered way of thinking, speaking, engaging, and acting. It leads to personal, cultural, and societal transformation. So keep that in mind. We start with it being love-centered in all the ways that we interact with folks. And it starts with me. It's that personal transformation, and then cultural, and then societal. My Ikigai, I don't know how many of you have seen this, but the Ikigai is, what is at the center? So what do I love? What does the world need? What can I be paid for? And what am I good at? So my passions are Dr. King's philosophy and methodology of nonviolence. I love loving on people. I know it's hard to tell on Zoom, but if we were all in person, I would have had a conversation with each one of you individually. I just love that there are 7.7 billion souls on this planet, and each one of us has that spark of divinity in us, and that's my mission. That's what I want to. I want people to leave an interaction with me feeling loved, seen. So this purpose, peace, justice, and strong institutions, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but that's part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. My talents are teaching and encouraging, being a learner leader. And I believe that when we plant seeds, we grow a harvest. So if you plant a tomato seed, you don't reap one tomato, you reap a whole harvest of tomatoes. So within that are seeds, right? And so what are the things that we can sow in terms of nonviolence? So Mrs. Coretta Scott King is the founder and architect of the King Legacy. She said the beloved community is a spiritual bond. It claims the energies and commitment of a diverse group of people who desire to serve a cause larger than themselves. It's fueled by unconditional love, feels like family, transcends race, religion, and class. So when we look at the Beloved Community Coalition, so first of all, I'm going to talk about what does beloved mean, and then community, and then coalition. So beloved, we recently finished up a series called Be Love, and we had Beloved Day on July 16th, but we have these series that we're doing. And what does it mean to be beloved? To be loved. What does that mean to ourselves? Are we loving to ourselves? And how are we loving to others? Here's one of our challenges: identify 3 local or national policies that are unjust. Begin to research them. You know, how do we interrupt economic inequities? And lots of countries are represented here, and I'm sure in each of those countries you would also find policies that meet this, or ways that we could lessen the economic inequities. So community, unity is in that word. So how are we all unified? So I love this example of this with the different hands. And then, as I mentioned, the United Nations has 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And this one, peace, justice, and strong institutions, I believe is the one where the Beloved Community Coalition falls in. So the Beloved Community Coalition is creating a global network of Nonviolence 365 practitioners. So I have my PhD. So what I am proposing is a very light mini prospectus. It's going to have 3 chapters. So an introduction, review of literature, and then what is our methodology. So I'm looking at a 3-pronged approach. So my vision to promote nonviolence throughout the world is to go into corporations, go into communities, and go into colleges. Here is my review of literature. These are some of the authors that I've assembled. A lot of names on here you all will recognize. Josiah Royce is the person who coined the phrase beloved community. And you all will see, you know, as I said, some of the vast readings. What's so exciting to me is, you know, Dr. King and Mrs. King, well, Dr. King in particular, you know, all of his books, obviously he was assassinated in 1968. And so his books were written before then. And of course we have Gandhi, but then we have somebody like Erica Chenoweth, which I think I did, I might have misspelled her name, I'm not sure, but she is doing scholarly research today on the efficacy of nonviolence around the world. So we have this great wealth of resources in addition to what Michael and Sephora have assembled for us. So again, it's this 3-pronged approach. So if we go into corporations, they have that corporate social responsibility. So how is it that they are, you know, being partners with communities in the area, maybe through money and donations, but through a lot of different programming and et cetera. But also, how can we use nonviolence to go in and transform a corporate culture? Same with communities. Within a community, every single community, they have K-12, P-12, educational communities, faith communities, law enforcement, government. Obviously, that list is endless, but I wanted it to be readable on this PowerPoint, and you all can see all the different partners to bring together. And then particularly on the colleges, looking at students, staff, and faculty, how are we researching? Very much like what Erica Chenoweth is doing. A friend of mine he had worked with a nonviolence organization with Emory University here in Atlanta. And one of the students that went through as a high school student just graduated with her PhD, and her dissertation was about nonviolence. How can we, you know, encourage more research about nonviolence? How can we have nonviolent departments, nonviolence offering a nonviolence minor all the way up to PhD? And what does that look like? again, I think words matter. And there's a reason why I started with students here, because without students, there is no college. Oftentimes what we'll hear when we think about colleges is faculty, staff, students. But again, just a little tweak, say students are our focus, and then staff, and then faculty. So this I'm not sure this will be the final name, but I'm kind of trying to stay with that BCC. So Beloved Community Communique. That is a daily reading. And again, if we've got P12 schools, then we can do a daily reading, something about nonviolence that's, written to their reading level. And then, for corporations, maybe it's, more corporate minded, more business minded, more leadership or mindset. And then colleges in terms of research, in terms of finding who they are as people. And so we can have lots of different options for this daily reading. So I propose that once these organizations become a part of partnership with the King Center, then they will have the designation of either Beloved Community Company, Beloved Community Academy, that would be the 12 schools, Beloved Community City designation, or Beloved Community Campus. We've got 90 days, and so I'm proposing to submit this research by December of 2021, as all of us are. And this is last year's King Center, the Beloved Community, the fierce urgency of now. And even though this is 2020, obviously I wholeheartedly believe in the fierce urgency of now, that now is the time. So with that, I don't know how I did time-wise, but Sephora, but I'm done.
Great. Yeah, you're just over by 1 minute, which is wonderful.
I'm sorry, and I didn't hear the timer. I didn't hear the ding.
I was trying. I didn't know where my microphone was. I was trying to do it, but it didn't work. So it's okay. You're perfectly fine.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Thank you very much for that very clear and concise presentation. Michael, would you like to start off, or shall I?
I just want to say that is a very ambitious project. And I wonder if you've connected with the Peace and Justice Studies Association, Elizabeth? And
I have not. Okay.
Yeah, that would be a very good lead for the teachers, the schools. And also, have you thought of preparing like an introductory packet of simple materials? That you kind of,
that's great too.
Yeah, it's kind of your card, here's what we will offer. And I hope people at the King Center could help you with that, but quite possibly we could at Meta also, if you just kind of sketch it out, and then you get a good designer and make it a PowerPoint and maybe a brochure, and that's how you get in the door.
Excellent.
Okay.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Michael.
You're very welcome.
Elizabeth, I think I agree with Michael. It's a wonderful and really ambitious project. So, but just to get it into like maybe break it into the three components of either the corporate, how you would approach corporations, or how you would approach colleges or communities, maybe just for the sake of practical application. It seems very, very broad. So just to maybe narrow the focus, not so much maybe in your prospectus and in your writing, you can have this nice broad approach, but in application, I think it'd be very difficult for you if you don't narrow down the focus just a little bit on each area, like what kinds of corporations or what kinds of colleges and how you would approach them specifically. I know you'll go into that in more detail in your project, but just for you to be aware of that, if you limit the scope, it doesn't mean that you can't do this broad, very ambitious thing, but it'll be much easier for you to implement. And similarly, I would also add with the literature. It's great to have all the background literature, but just for your writing, I would narrow the focus to maybe 3 or 4 main books. Otherwise, you'll just get lost in the whole thing, and it won't be a short prospectus. It'll be a PhD prospectus then.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, great feedback. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm curious though, how would you approach what kind of corporations are you thinking of that you would approach that you think would be amenable to, and why would they be amenable to this? What is
Well,
Mhm.
for example, Coca-Cola is international, and they definitely have a corporate social responsibility. So it's corporations that have an international footprint and also who've already expressed. In other words, I wouldn't necessarily propose going to one that's only here in the United States and seems to be very disinterested in this. So I would start with sort of low hanging fruit. So as I said, the Coca-Cola company, it started here in Atlanta, so it's based here. Also, the NFL commissioner and Dr. Bernice King are very good friends, and so we're in a corporation in a partnership with the NFL, National Football League. Again, primarily in the United States, but because of their international reach or their international pull, that would be a place to start. Those are the first two that come to my mind.
Okay, all right. I'll be interested to learn, how Coca-Cola would benefit from it. But yeah, but just for the sake of time, I'd love to know more, but just for the sake of time, I think we need to move on. Like, how would Coca-Cola, just to have that in your mind while you're writing, what would motivate Coca-Cola to become part of a beloved community, given their sort of overall capitalistic orientation? I'm just a little bit
Well,
skeptical of that. So
imagine if you had a brochure, and if on the brochure was a little Coca-Cola emblem. So on every brochure, every PowerPoint, every daily communique, everything had that. I mean, that's the capitalistic point. But then, once it's translated, once it goes out to 195 other countries, and then, then it's sort of like, wasn't it you all that was talking about that the movie theaters are sponsored by Coke, but you get into the movie theater and part of the advertisement at the beginning is all about Coke? Like, you're a captive audience, but they're still advertising. So wasn't that in this class that we were talking about that? Maybe that was in a different class we were talking about, but anyway.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. That's a really great project, and I look forward to reading all about it. Yes, thank you very much.
Can I just jump in for a second, Sephora?
Please.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, Elizabeth. I just put a link in there about from an organization called Holla Back that does work to end street harassment. And their strength is really these kinds of corporate partnerships that they're able to do. One of them was with like L'Oreal Paris.
Wow.
And so they have it on their website how they do it and how they partner. And I just put a link in there for you, okay?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, y'all. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. So Anne, you're up next.
All right. I'm in a different place. I'm at the ocean, so I hope you can hear me well enough on this computer. So I came to this group and I found MediCenter through my involvement with Beyond War. Beyond War was a group that was very active in the 80s and really worked to create the end to the Cold War through different means. But it's based on some fundamental principles that are so much in alignment with MediCenter that we've bought MediCenter books and passed them out to people and mailed them to our donors, et cetera. And it's an educational, it's using education for action. So the principles of Beyond War are, we are all one interdependent whole. The means are the ends in the making. I will not make an enemy. I will resolve conflicts and maintain an attitude of goodwill. So my fundamental project is, and I've already begun, I've bought 10 books and I'm disseminating them, and I'm, as World Beyond War is doing, having book groups around the third harmony. So I feel like this is really in alignment with what Beyond War is all about. So Martin, Kara, and I are all part of Beyond War. We came to you to this training because of our original connection with the Nonviolent Handbook. So I'm so delighted about that. The other thing is that we want to keep our principles relevant. And I feel like this course has been so rich. The reading has been incredible, and all of you and the teaching to clarify and make relevant the principles of Beyond War, to bring it into this more complex study that we've been doing together. So that will be another part of my project. And then what's really captured me is, I know it's a little esoteric, but what's really captured me is the imagery of the flower of life that's on your screens for our course. And also the two interlocking circles. So these images have really captured me and sort of bring lots of different threads together. Kara Martin and I have been invited to speak at the United Church Women's National Conference in October. So we are going to speak, and this is the subject about reconciling what's irreconcilable. And the idea of the two polarities overlapping, and that in order to reconcile them, you put them in a larger playing field. You reconcile them from a different place. So this flower of life is made up of many of these overlapping circles, and they create the form of the six-petaled flower. So more to come. That's what I'm going to write about, is how these polarities must be reconciled in a larger field of understanding. You can call it the web of life. You can call it the spiritual aspect that we've been talking about. You can give it very many different names, but that will be a short, brief writing and presentation in October. Because I look so much at the networks, that's what my gift is networking. I'm involved in our 4J Equity Committee. I'm involved on the advisory board of the U of O School of Music and Dance. So I have goals within these action areas. Right now I'm disseminating the third harmony to individuals within my equity committee, and I'm thinking now more clearly about creating constructive programs that we can come around. So this will be a slower moving process, but I've already begun that. And I also am now meeting regularly with the dean of the School of Music and Dance, because one of my goals is to bring African dance into all the high schools of Eugene. So these are my particular gifts and my particular orientations that are just validated and upheld by what we've been learning. So I want to just finish this whole proposal. So my proposal, as you can see, is to disseminate the books and have book groups use the books, take down the names of the books also, in addition to the third harmony. The books in this course are so potent. Of course, I'm already disseminating A Door into Ocean to many people. So this is what I do. And then we talk. And I talk about things a lot. And I'm going to write the talk with my compadres for the Church Women United. So those are the two main projects. I'd like to end by reading on page 384, Braiding Sweetgrass, because I feel like what you were saying, Roz, what is it that we love? What does the world need, and what are you good at? I mean, that's pretty much what Braiding Sweetgrass is telling us. So the moral covenant of reciprocity calls us to honor our responsibilities for all we have been given, for all we have taken. It's our turn now, long overdue. Let us hold a giveaway from Mother Earth, spread out blankets for her and pile them high with gifts of our own making. Imagine the books, the paintings, the poems, the clever machines, the compassionate acts, the transcendent ideas, the perfect tools, the fierce defense of all that has been given. gifts of mind, hands, heart, voice, and vision, all offered up on behalf of the earth. Whatever our gift, we're called to give it and to dance for the renewal of the world in return for the privilege of breath. So I continue to do that, inspired by all of you and this teaching. So it'll find its form also in poetry and dance. So thank you.
Wow, that's quite amazing, Anne. You're going in so many directions. It's quite wonderful. Yeah, absolutely lovely. So just to be sort of very academic about this, but what can you just sort of do like one of those components, or maybe just two of those components, just for the submitting
Yes.
a final just on a practical level?
Right. So the two things are disseminating the Third Harmony books and,
Right.
and pulling people around. And the second thing is writing this talk.
Conference.
It's going to be at the Church Women's United. So those are the two concrete things that will be done
Okay.
before December.
Great, great, wonderful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else have a suggestion?
May I chip in something, Sephora?
Please.
Yeah, sorry, I can't seem to turn on my video, but no matter.
Uh-huh.
And that was wonderful. As you go around with the books, we can possibly help you with our distributor, giving, various kinds of packages. And also I'd like to suggest, don't forget the film.
Oh, of course. I'm going to show the film for the Equity Committee. That's another
There we
goal.
go.
I'm showing the film for the Equity Committee. Whoops. Yes. So
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Congratulations. That's a wonderful project.
okay, thank you.
May I say something, Anne?
Yes.
Yeah, when we do the book groups, I think it might be great to have some kind of a again like how to evaluate some strategy format to get the impact of the book group, because we've had these great groups and then we don't have a good strategy for getting the feedback for what they do with it or how so you know what I mean? It'd be nice if we could use, I think that's where we could also use some help from Michael Sephora. Like, how do we know how this work impacts people's hearts and activities? Feedback.
One way to do that is to actually have like a mini little project that they could do from the book. And that's one way to get them to really engage with it on a practical level. And I don't know how you would do a project on each book, but but maybe a couple of books, like make it into a topic, like a series and a topic, and then at the end of that, perhaps, I'm not sure.
I like the idea of having the constructive program framework.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so empowering. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you also. You're like gave us extra 5 minutes.
Good.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
You can tell where in the ocean you are.
I'm at Yachats, and we just went to see Amanda, the Amanda statue, which is about an Indigenous woman who was blind, and they finally are telling her story here on the coast. So we just visited her this morning. Yeah.
And I think that what you read from Braiding Sweetgrass is such a beautiful, like all of these different avenues that all are interconnected, and and so any possible point that you're at doesn't matter, right? Nothing is inconsequential at all. So yeah, that's great. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, great. So Ayatakshi, you are next.
I have to share the screen because I have a presentation.
Okay. Oops, sorry, I think I. Oops. Sorry, I accidentally muted you.
Have you given me the? Yeah. So thank you, everyone. As part of the final project, I plan to write a research paper on gender and coping behavior at the workplace. And I'll give a little bit of background. Why did I choose this? It's because I have been working in organizations for the last couple of years, I think 5 years now. And I have been trying to look at how spirituality, nonviolence affects people's responses to violence and how people perceive violence. So so this project is part of my dissertation. So again, a little bit of literature review and the background of my study. Workplace violence is very common. It's a global issue, and as per the, I mean, in India we have violence instances in manufacturing industries, in the IT organizations, and of course, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it says that in USA the healthcare industry and the social services industries are the most affected ones. So so when I was doing the literature review, I have also realized that the way people perceive violence also contributes to the further escalation of violence. So and gender differences also plays a vital role in it. Because, for example, in India, which is very high in power distance, so women respond to violence very differently compared to men. Like women are much more passive, much more avoidant in their strategy compared to men who are overt, who are aggressive in terms of responding to violence. So, based on my literature review, I have found many gaps, but here I would like to identify one major gap, and that is the gender differences and how this particular gender difference actually contributes to, rather influences the response mechanism and the coping strategies towards violence. So, for example, there is a study by Vertia et al., where they say that gender norms may inhibit men from seeking social support, while it may pressurize women to simply walk away. And gender differences also had impact on the coping needs and the coping resources. So based on these two, the purpose statement that I have for my study is to ascertain gender differences in coping needs and responses in the context of high power distant culture. And I would like to do this study in India. And my objective of the study is, it should be objective, to explore gender differences in terms of coping needs, resources, and responses. And these two are my major research questions that I would like to explore in my study. The first one is, how do each gender perceive negative behaviors at workplace? Is violence always inflicted upon women by men, or is it vice versa? And my second question is, how do each gender cope with such negative behaviors? So when I say negative behaviors, it's mainly in the form of, uh, bullying, or maybe in the form of harassment of any sorts, or kind of ostracism, incivility, overt or covert ways, or any kind of conflicts. So these are the negative behaviors that I plan to kind of study. So the methodology that I wish to take for my study would be a phenomenological study, because I want to study the lived experiences of people who have actually faced those violences and how they have responded to it, whether it was a violent response or a non-violent response, or whether the response actually escalated to further violence, or rather it has diffused the violent spiral. And my data collection would be through conversational interviews, as I said, mainly to gather the lived experiences of the people as per the hermeneutic phenomenology. And my data analysis would be thematic analysis as per the same methodology that that I have proposed earlier. And at this point of time, my sample would be 10 men and women working professionals. And I plan to study industries like IT, where the violence rate is quite high in India, the manufacturing industries, the BFSI, which is the banking and financial sectors. So these are the target industries that I plan to capture. So my last slide is, where do I see my study is going to impact? So as of now, I see there are two areas where my study is going to impact. One is theoretically, where the study is expected to question the main assumption of masculine aggression. I'm trying to kind of deconstruct or unpack the masculine aggression, or what this masculine aggression is, and whether it is present even in female. So if it is present in female, do we still call it masculine aggression, or can we kind of name it as female aggression as well? And the second impact that I see my study will create is kind of how reactions to mistreatment is influenced by gender roles and response strategies. And the last impact that I see in terms of policy formulation, of course, in the labor officers and the human resource managers, to build violence prevention strategies that are gender sensitive. So these are the references that I have used to make my presentation. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ayatakshi. Thank you very much. That's very really interesting project. My only comment would be, I know you're questioning. So my comment would be, when you're questioning masculine aggression, maybe you should phrase it that you're questioning the category of masculine aggression and what comprises that, which could include any gender kind of thing, right? So it's not just in other words, what does masculine aggression mean, like in popular, like how people understand it, but then to make that a problem by saying, well, no, women can also behave in these ways, so we shouldn't be calling it masculine aggression, but some other gender violence or some other form of thing. So not to like essentialize masculinity and femininity. So just to be careful about that kind of essential categorization.
Are you hearing me, Sephora?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to chime in with something. Ayatakshi, you already have a very rich program laid out, but I just wanted to suggest that you might want to introduce the idea of shifting the competitive aspect of masculine aggression from violence to a nonviolent framework. That is, a lot of what we call masculine aggression, men use women as victims to jostle for status among each other. And so the women are really just being used as tools. Now, is there some way that we could introduce the idea of nonviolence as a skill, as a competence that men could compete in achieving? I think I wish I had some studies to point you to, but I think there is some work done out there on how people can compete at being more nonviolent, just as they compete at being violent.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. I'll just reiterate to see if I have understood it well. So how people, especially the male gender, would compete non-violence? Is that what you mean? I mean,
Yes.
compete in non-violence.
Yes. Of course, if you had some other way of introducing the factor of nonviolence into the whole situation, that would be fine. But I'm suggesting this as one possible way.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Any other suggestions, feedback?
Great work, though, Aitashi.
Thank you.
I have some feedback. Oh, I see Anne.
Yes, I can't see anyone. I'll just close the slide. Yes, I can see now. Yeah. Yes, Stephanie.
Sorry about that. I just was going to say that when you're talking to people about their violent experiences, it might be good to enter those conversations sensitively and think about that ahead of time. How you can have those conversations without re-traumatizing, and you know, what resources you would be able to offer that if there was a sense of this being a difficult discussion to have, or you know, maybe you could think about some resources just to support the human beings in the study.
Yeah. I would just like to add that my study is approved by the IRB, the Institutional Review Board. So, but still, I would like to kind of look into the questions once again before I pose it to the people.
I think Anne has a question and Kaka also.
Yeah, I just had a clarifying question. Just what Michael's feedback that he gave to you, Aitashi. He said shift the masculine aggression from a violence framework to a nonviolence framework. I wonder if there's more to the framework, or what is this negative behavior that can you define more what this negative behavior is that you're trying to get to? Where does it land in the whole spectrum? And again, secondarily, what is I don't understand, but how can you shift a framework from violence to nonviolence, or is there a way to shift the framework and make it larger? Just, I have no answer to that question. Just wondered if there's possibility there.
Thanks, Anne. I'll attempt to answer your question. I think by negative behaviors, I primarily mean by any kind of behaviors that adds to the toxicity at the workplace. So I know toxicity is a very extreme word to use, but if I kind of be specific, it means like workplace bullying. You know, there are plenty of literature, especially in the healthcare industries in the US, where nurses bullying is very prevalent in hospitals. Another one is the incivilities. Incivility is kind of you know, very covert form of aggression, and I can, if I have to rank it, it is at the very beginning, like before the conflict escalates into something which is very serious. It starts with a very inert, very implicit uncivil behavior. So in the form of office politics, say for example. The other one that I'm trying to look at is harassment, any kind of sexual harassment, whether it's on the men or women. So that is another thing that I'm trying to look at it. And of course, conflicts, which are destructive conflicts. So yeah. And to answer your second question, like how I'm planning to shift the masculine aggression to, into the non-violence framework. I mean, this is something which I need to brainstorm a little bit because the idea is just told to me by Michael. So I need to kind of sink in and brainstorm. Maybe next time when we connect, we can discuss about this.
Happy to talk about it.
Thank you, Michael. I think Kaka also has something to ask.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Kaka, I can hear you.
Okay. Congratulations for your very serious work, Ayatashi. And sorry for not turning on my camera. I'm in a public space without privacy now. I would like to ask you two things. I was I don't know, maybe curious about your project. Do you maybe you said that and I didn't record it in my memory, but will you try to like listen to these people trying to understand maybe what they understand as gender violence? For example, why I am asking this, because I was thinking about my experience and I was remembering that for many years I suffered violence at work, but I didn't know it was gender violence. And so I was not understanding it as gender violence. And also, I remember it also depended on the person. Like sometimes I was suffering it from other women, sometimes from men, but it was a very complex net of power relations, you know, and but maybe you already thought about it, and maybe just thinking now there are other bias we have like in our lives depending on our personal story. I don't know. Just please feel free to not answer if it's not important for your research. And again, super congratulations for your brilliant work.
Thank you so much, Kaka, and that's a very interesting question that you have raised. In fact, when I started with my data collection, which was like 6 months back, even I did not have any idea what is gender violence and what kind of questions I need to ask my respondents. But I was quite surprised and quite at the same time fascinated to hear from men that they were actually facing violence from women as well. Whereas I thought that it's always the weaker sex who suffers, and I mean, of course, that narrative is there. But I was also quite surprised to hear that even men suffer violence from women. And that's when I thought that even the gender doesn't mean only kind of protecting one particular sex. uh, it means like including everyone, even the queer, even the third gender, everyone includes the gender studies. So if you would have asked me this question like some 3-4 months back, I had no idea. And then I came across this course on alternate cosmology where where there was the feminism, spirituality, and non-violence, and that actually attracted me to be part of this course, because I did not have any idea of what is feminist theory, what is gender. Like, to me it was like a violence is violence. So so thank you so much for asking me that question, Kaka.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering, and I'm so happy listening to you.
Yeah, that all of these were really great questions and feedbacks. But unfortunately, I have a little few more thoughts, but maybe I'll just email you, Ayatakshi, because we're running out of time. But I think just to just sort of the final, I think maybe you had like a number of different kinds of violences that you were going to ask about. But if you could narrow that down into maybe just gender violence for this particular chapter of your dissertation, and then maybe deal with different forms, and then we can discuss more about how you can shift the framework to the nonviolence one. We can discuss that further. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, great. So now, Brad, you're up next.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. Yeah, I hope you can hear me okay. I'm in a public space, so internet may not be. So,
Could you
my
just
work,
turn up your volume a little bit? It's a bit hard to hear you.
sure. Let's see. Yeah, my microphone is up all the way. I hope that it's okay. Um, so a lot of my work, I'm feeling very humble right now. I'm certainly in the presence of some great folks, and you all are doing some great work. A lot of my work is sort of my theory of work is healthy individuals that are leading into healthy communities and building ethical organizations. And so through connecting with nature and the divine. So a lot of what I do is sort of spiritual development and healing work, psychological and sort of spiritual work. I'm doing ecotherapy with individuals. And another side of my work is doing permaculture work and community development and building cooperatives. And so I'm looking at ways to tie nonviolence education into that. And so that's going to be my primary project is education. And I have a couple of ideas. Originally, I was looking at doing a workshop, either a single workshop or a series of classes on nonviolence for communities of intent, for intentional communities and cooperatives. I come across a lot of communities that are asking about this, and a lot of it is nonviolent communication. And so I'm looking at getting certified in that as well, and looking at tying this project into that work. But then as everybody was talking, I said, oh, this is interesting. I see a lot of opportunity for bringing aspects of this into other parts of my work, such as some background, like the spiritual aspects of nonviolence as I'm working with individuals. And I'm really interested in working with men and boys. And I see a lot of opportunity here for doing healing circles and resources for men, like both for perpetrators of violence, but also for victims. Because I know that one thing that affects us men is that often if you're a victim of nonviolence, I'm hearing that there's very few places to turn for help. That often when men go to counseling or when men seek different types of help for these situations, they're sort of ridiculed, like people kind of don't understand how men can experience violence. I mean, for myself, I experienced physical and emotional trauma early in my life from my mother, who was abused. and so I look at a lot of questions about like how is violence like passed down through the family line, and so that's so I think I know that I'd like to choose one, and so I'm not sure if that's possible. I'd like to do kind of a two-headed sort of project here, and one would be workshops or classes for communities, and then the other would be bringing this into my ecotherapy work, and particularly with men, and teaching about the spiritual aspects and exploring nonviolence through trauma healing and stuff like that. So that's what I have so far. I'd love to hear your feedback.
Michael, do you want to?
Gee, I'm still kind of thinking, Brad, that it's a very good direction to go in. I mean, all the presentations so far have made me think that we want to have that introductory packet that I was talking about from the very first, that, some kind of calling card that you hand in to give people. And I see people have such a so little knowledge of nonviolence and such an inaccurate idea of it, that when you mention nonviolence, so how to show them in a simple, clear way what we mean, and give them a sense of the excitement of what the possibilities are in this unexplored area of life. So those are very general considerations, Brad, but it's building up for me as I listen to all of these presentations. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. I think you've got so many nice avenues that you can go in, and especially the nature spiritual aspect. I think that's sort of part of your work already, right? With your healing work and your permaculture work. So you can obviously expand in any of those directions, and they would be very relevant and consequential. But I really do like the idea of the men's circles, the listening circles, and how you could, that I think is a super great idea that is very little implemented in practice. So if you are able to find a community or even just a space, especially if you're in a large enough or close to a large enough urban area where you can get people to come in, I think that's a great idea. I would really like to see if you feel so inclined as to develop an outline of that project. Not that the others aren't interesting. So it is whatever. I just found that quite compelling when you talked about it, because yes, there is. And how would you take the listening and the violence and transform it into nonviolent, like, how would that process work? That would be very, very compelling to know more about. Any other thoughts? Are you drawn to one over the other, or are you? I know you've got like a couple of them going, but just the cooperatives. Are you involved in any intentional communities already, or?
I'm a facilitator of cooperative development, but I'm still really, that's one thing that I'm looking at is that it seems like a lot of a lot of folks in the course are, well positioned and sort of able to deliver to a community that exists already. And part of what I'm looking at doing with this is developing material to like then create opportunity, because I don't yet have strong connections to the communities, especially the cooperative development. So perhaps the men's work, the spiritual kind of work, tied into the ecotherapy and kind of coaching work, perhaps that is a good place to start.
I would narrow it down though, to like just pick one of them for now. I mean, it's not that you shouldn't work on them, but just for the final project, just try to focus on one thing that you can develop well, and think about like how would you implement it practically, or you could, if you do actually have the means to implement it practically, that would be great. If you can start off, that's good too. Yeah. And did you have?
Sorry, I seem to have a lot to say today. I was really taken by what you said. You're interested in the spiritual aspect of nonviolence regarding perpetrators and victims of violence around men. And I would be interested in hearing more about what captures you about the spiritual aspect of nonviolence.
Yeah, that's a great question, Anne. A lot of the learning that happened for me in this course was exploring this through, I'm independently coming to a lot of awareness. I come out of the Christian tradition, I come out of the evangelical tradition, and that tradition in particular, and I think religion in general, perpetrates a lot of violence in the world, right? Like in the name of God. And so I've been deconstructing and sort of deconverting out of these lenses and these frameworks into more of a general contemplative, mystical sense. And so to come to this course and explore not the strategy of nonviolence, but the philosophy of like unity and oneness and wholeness, of mankind is tying into some other things that I have going on. And so I think when I'm looking at the spiritual aspects of it, it's especially being American. I mean, it's funny because I'm in Mexico for the next 6 months. I'm looking at maybe moving down here, but being in America, like we're so divided by labels. It's all about racism, black and white. It's all about sexism, men and women. And like part of what interested me in this course was exploring these ideas of unity and oneness. And so perhaps that, as I'm still exploring, I don't know how that would come into the project yet. And so maybe that's just like a depth of study for myself in the future. But
thank you.
Thanks very much, Brad. And okay, great. Any other thoughts for Brad before we move on? Oh, Kim, sorry, I just saw your hand up.
Sorry, apologies for not having my camera on. I have a lot of noise, visual noise. So I just want to say how really excited I am, Brad, about that you are pursuing this work, possibly pursuing this work with men and boys. And I think that that's where a lot of this work lies. I think we've really neglected our boys. And I think to also think about violence in terms of an emotional violence, because I think that that's really at the heart of that work, of the emotional violence that we do to our boys, and those that identify as boys. So really, thank you so much.
Yeah, and in case you need resources on that, Kim is a good source to get in touch with, because that's her work. So yeah.
Yeah, super happy to share.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, right. Thank you. All right, so we're gonna move to David. It's up to you.
Yep. So Sephora, can you give me access so I can share my screen? And while she's doing that, I just want to give a little bit of background. So I got my PhD in humanities and film studies, and I teach at a college in Florida. I teach those two subjects. A few years ago, I came across the text that we read in this class, Michael Negler's the Guide for the Nonviolence Handbook, and it changed my life, actually. And I realized that as I was teaching my classes, that I was teaching a history of violence. You know, it's easy to go, you know, World War I, and here's the art that follows that, and World War II, and here's the art that follows that, and, you know, Vietnam, and here's the art that follows that. And it's made me really reconsider, you know, what I teach, and that I would really rather teach the history of nonviolence. And so, let's see, over the pandemic, I had a chance to write a humanities textbook and put it online. And so let me just share my screen. Let's see. So here's like when we start going through the 20th century, I'm really trying to teach, you know, kind of a history of nonviolence and how that works. You know, this is what the students see when they go to their online textbook, so they can read, you know, pieces of important nonviolent texts and see clips from movies and things like that. For my project, what I want to do, I've already written kind of a big chunk of a book on, I'm calling it The Brief History of Nonviolence. I've kind of realized that, you know, to be able to teach nonviolence, I really want to have, you know, some concrete examples of things that a lot of people don't know about. So here's kind of an early draft of this, A Brief History of Nonviolence. And what I want to do for my project that's going to be due in December is kind of get this kind of cleaned up and ready, and have a kind of a first draft that I can turn into you, Sephora. But I just want to kind of show you that there's a lot of things. This is from Michael's book, The Search for a Nonviolent Future, where he talks about the holy experiment that took place in Pennsylvania. You can go through and you can teach the American Revolution and how it started as a nonviolent movement and then kind of got taken over by kind of violent voices. And so I just kind of go through kind of from early texts, you know, from all sorts of different traditions, and then, you know, and go through into, you know, into today, some things that are happening. And I just want to, so for my project, I want to spend a little more time on this, and go through and especially add some of the things that have happened in modern times, that Meta is very good at categorizing, nonviolence radio, and also let's see, the nonviolence newsletter that goes out. I want to add to that, and then turn this in to you, Sephora, to kind of look at in December. Kim, do you have a thought?
I think Kim, did you have your hand up?
Oh, is that from last before?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sephora, we can just, I can turn it back to you.
Yeah, that's a wonderful project. But is this going to be a standalone piece, or is it part of what is it part of your textbook, or what? Sorry,
I wasn't. Thank you. I wasn't very clear about that. So this is going to be its own book. I already have the textbook. I just wanted to kind of show you one other way I was bringing in nonviolence, but that's just kind of, you know, a few little highlights. But what I really want to do is write a full book on kind of the brief history of nonviolence.
And this is going to be the outline for the book, or more like what is it that you're actually going to be working on? Like, is it just the outline of the book, or a particular chapter, or how are you?
So I've got most of it written. I just need to I just need to amp it up a little. I need to amp up some things in the ending, and then polish it, and then I want to turn it into you to look at in December.
Okay, great. Michael? Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, this could be so useful, David.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. I wonder how familiar you are at this point with the existing resources. I mean, there's been several histories of nonviolence up to a particular point, and there's also at Swarthmore, there's a resource called the Global Nonviolent Action.
Yep, I've been.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I've been using that. I got that from you, from Nonviolence Radio, and a lot of other sources like I've used a lot of John Lewis. I've used a lot of work from Gandhi, Ken Budigan's work, the Chenoweth Stephen.
Very good, yeah.
And your books are the ones that started me. I really love what you do. And another thing that I've been doing as I've been writing this is I've kind of broken it down to, on this day this happened, and then on social media, what I do is I've been posting today in nonviolence, and then I give just a little blip. So this is not going to be sort of a deep dive into any of these things. It's just going to be kind of a, let's look at all the different important things that have happened in nonviolence, so that we can teach, some important things that have happened throughout history.
Wonderful. Are you a member of PJSA?
I'm not.
It's a really good resource. They don't drag you in and make you sign documents. You pay a certain amount, but they have really good resources that are easily available to all members. And on the other hand, David, when your book is ready, that would be a superb way of getting it to the attention of teachers.
Thank you. That's a helpful tip.
Yeah.
Itakshi.
Congratulations, David. I'm eager to read your book. I have one question for you. Like, what I understand is you're planning to write on history of nonviolence, right? So how do you plan to chronologically arrange the events of nonviolence, and and how do you select those events? On what basis do you select those events?
Thank you. Let's see. Thank you for that question. So I'm just going from. Let me share my screen again. Let's see. I'm going from all sorts of different traditions. So I've got some Christian traditions. I've got some, Chinese traditions and Indian traditions. And what I'm just kind of trying to do with this is, just have, kind of here are some key moments in nonviolence that we can hang on to and that we can teach each other.
So it's a chronological, you're going chronologically, right?
Chronologically.
David, it might be wonderful to see if we have more than just a long series of events here, but a progress. Like, has mankind as a whole improved in sophistication and awareness of nonviolence? So to do some, take an overview of all your cases and look back and see if there's something building there, that would be extremely interesting and extremely encouraging if the answer is yes.
Thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would echo that. Maybe in the introduction, you could sort of have a broader kind of analysis of all of your sort of data and give it more shape, like maybe it's not just a straight line, but maybe it's circular, it's like a spiraling thing, or maybe, sort of in a visual, because you are sort of a visual, kind of thing, you could maybe, and that would help. So the introduction would maybe also be nice to have as a standalone piece. And what, Michael, you're sort of saying, maybe it could tie into that, like have something to quickly hand to people as this broad kind of overview of what is nonviolence, kind of thing. Yeah.
That sounds good. Thank you, Sephora.
Sorry, just one thing. Also, if there is some kind of distinction between the output versus the outcome of the events, then I think it will be much more interesting for the readers. I mean, more informative. Like, what are the outcomes from the non-violent resistance or any non-violent movements? Any positive outcome.
That's good. Thank you, Maitakshi.
Any other suggestions for David? Martin?
In reference to what you were saying, Michael, about progression, what have we learned? Is it getting better? There's a long chronological history, and you want to focus on nonviolence, but then as an explanation of how we lapsed back into violence again. This is a thought. I'm not sure it would maybe pollute the book, but thinking about it in a grander scale, well, how do we slip back? And maybe the two aren't related. Maybe there's a power over here that wants violence and is pushing for it all the time. And the nonviolent part goes, we put it on pause, or we put it on the back burner, and then violence takes over again. And then there are other episodes where we'll revert back, and we've learned a lesson for a short time. But I don't know that enters in your book, but it just brings up in my mind, how do we keep bouncing back and forth? And, or are we bouncing back and forth? Or is there always this evidence that the violence is always in our society, and maybe the nonviolence is trying to suppress it and is successful for a while? I don't know.
Yeah, I really like that, Martin. I would kind of put it this way, that nonviolence is tried and tried and tried, but it hasn't caught on. It hasn't become systematic. It hasn't become embedded in the culture. So are we getting closer to that? What would we need to do? Because I think we can propose, and it would not be implausible, that if people in general had a good grasp of what nonviolence is, they would never go back to violence. I mean, who would do that? So as nonviolence advances, this is kind of along the line of what I was already suggesting to you, David. As nonviolence advances in the mere accumulation of episodes, are we getting at something that we could use to really make it the mainstream? Is there some kind of breakthrough that we are building our way up to there? And if so, how can we facilitate that?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Michael and Martin. Kaka is.
Yeah, David, I was very stimulated by your project, and I was like wondering if you, this is my interpretation, so please feel free to not consider it if it's not making sense for you. But I was like, wow, maybe he's decolonizing or descolonizing the way we tell the official history in another way. Not maybe you are not focusing on geography, maybe you are, but I don't know. But you are focusing also, like, instead of telling the story of wars and tragedies and so many pains, you are also telling the story of reconciliations, transformation, justice, and inspiring and beautiful things. And maybe I move it because we are living so difficult times and hard times, and I was just like, I was just thinking that I would like to be nurtured by these stories if I could. So maybe, but I don't know, maybe it's not that. Feel
No,
free
it
to.
is that, and I love that. Thank you so much, Kaka. That was a beautiful way to articulate that.
Thank you so much for your project also.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So are there any other final thoughts for David before we move on?
I have one final thought.
Okay.
This interplay of violence and nonviolence and the spiraling movement, I'm so curious about how you're going to resolve some of this thinking, David, and how we're all going to resolve it. I just think it's pulled up something very potent. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I think once you're writing your introduction, and you can start seeing the shapes, you could actually just draw like visually, like how the history appears to you before you even start writing. And that will really help your writing process as well.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's really, I really look forward to reading that.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, Ruth, you're up next.
Hi. Okay, so I'm mostly going to read mine because I want to make sure that I get it all out in an organized fashion. So my idea is to make a photo mosaic and of nonviolent communication. And a photo mosaic is one picture that's made up by individual pictures. So it tells a lot. And the objective is in making nonviolent communication accessible to the average person. So this would be something of a primer. So when people go about their lives and they're around nonviolent communication, it has more of a place to land. So the tool to have that happen is curating a poignant educational depiction through a practice of seeing the world through this lens. And this is my pitch. So in conversation with loved ones and new acquaintances, I find many people do not know what nonviolent communication is. Sometimes people tell me that they've done a skills training or they've read Rosenberg's book. Many people see the world extremely split between what we can do and what we don't have control over. And in busy lives, people are hesitant to change habits or add involvement if it means putting something new on their plate. And I'm not a words person, and I generally feel exhausted engaging with people using verbal communication. My idea is to show people in an easy to distribute format what NVC is all about. So creating this photo mosaic will effectively map what on a daily basis and bigger picture makes up NVC. And it will tell about its broad reaching effects and the moment to moment decisions. So how we engage with ourselves, other beings, and nature, and what individuals and organizations are growing NVC and what naturally exists that we can engage in with just a slight shift in our focus. Some examples to fill the picture out better is showing local businesses and companies with NVC practices or outputs. So companies and brands like Patagonia, who only use organic cotton, they sell used clothing, they upcycle, they take in the old clothes back and they make new products out of those. And they're also using their platform to loudly talk about social, political, environmental injustice. And I would show things like recycling, upcycling options in day-to-day small changes that we can make. Show commercial food grown through regenerative farming practices that's packaged in sustainable materials. I would also show leaders, some historic leaders whose work is still affecting us and we're moving forward today, and then also current leaders and emerging ones, and maybe have some quotes in there. Like this was one that we said in class recently by James Baldwin: "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." So help shape a little bit by some thought processes. Showing things being repaired instead of thrown away to be used again. And then get some pictures of interactions where it's human to human, or maybe it's interspecies, and show intercultural exchanges and examples of supportive, compassionate practices and systems, and show some hopefully green building examples, like eco-friendly building. So I know like there are net zero buildings that exist and are coming out, so stuff like that. And then I was considering starting, I don't use social media, and I'm very interested in its pervasive reach. And I was thinking about starting a hashtag to go along with this project. So as I'm creating and curating these photos, starting an NVC hashtag, and it would be a good place to, at the same time the photo is shown, have a description, and just as sort of almost research, as like an experiment, see how much traction I can get and cross collaboration that way. And it would also be like instantly global. Because I've always been curious about, I'm not a tech person, I'm not a social media person, but I think that it can be a tool that does reach such a large platform. So I'm interested to play around with that. Okay, and then if there's time, which I don't expect, but I had this idea that I could also, if I get over 365 photos to make up this photo mosaic, I could do a daily reader, which is a book for corresponding to each day. And you can look at it and it'll give you thoughts and ideas for, you know, how to change your thinking and how to change your behavior. And it gives you reflections, and each date could correspond to a photo, and it would give a description of the NVC depicted in the photo, and it could give you a nugget to plant the seed for how to maybe percolate that day on shifting your thinking and your behavior. So that's where I got to. Thanks.
Oh.
Yeah,
Ruth, only one thing I really have to take objection to. You started off by saying you weren't a verbal person, and then you gave us this very, very clear, very inspiring introduction. So I won't accept that. However,
thank you so much.
Yeah, I do have a couple of comments.
Mm-hmm.
One is we want to distinguish carefully, and I have conversations that I've had with Marshall to clear this with him, so
Mm-hmm.
he would not object. But we want to distinguish carefully between nonviolence as we approached it in this class, a principle with applications in many, many different fields and drawing upon many different layers of the human capacity, and nonviolent communication, which is a specific technique which kicks in at a specific stage of the conflict spiral. Mm-hmm. To make that a little bit clearer, mm-hmm. NVC works very well when people are willing to communicate. But what do you do when the opponent has dehumanized you to the extent that he or she will not hear what you're saying? This is where Gandhi comes in. This is where self-suffering comes in, and satyagraha awakens the heart of the opponent. So really, this is just nomenclatural, because it sounded to me like you were talking about nonviolence and not NVC. So let's see.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think to a degree it shows my beginning of formally studying nonviolence, and also my held belief currently that it's I truly, for me, where I am now, feel nonviolent communication is, to me, extends to the immaterial of, it's not just the words, but it's the engagement with everything around us, and almost the metaphysical. So I have gotten somewhat attached to using NVC, and I can drop the C if that, okay, we'll get this in line.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking, because NVC is actually a brand, and it has a very specific application. What you're talking about is much deeper and much broader, and in the end, probably much more useful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. Yeah, I second Michael on that, because you've got so many different components of where you're going with your photographs, and you are talking about the big picture. And of course, nonviolent communication is part of it, but it is a part of the big picture, not the big picture itself. So yeah, I think that's there. So, but I'm curious, like, what is the format, like, what is your mural, what is the format of your mural, like, what are you visualizing? Like, how big is it? How will you present it? Like, where will you present it? Is it an art piece? Or, I mean, I think this is absolutely fabulous what you're saying. I just want to get clear on like, what are the contours of what it's going to look like?
Yeah, I had thought about that. So the end piece will be a photo that can sort of be as small or as big as you can apply it. And I did not come up with a way at the end that I am certain I could distribute it, which is why I then thought, okay, the social media piece might come into play nicely, because along the way it will be distributed. And then by the time the final creation has come together, it'll be 3 months from now. I think there will be some evolution during that process to have an idea of looking at the world through this lens for 3 months, how I can then get that final piece out there. But I would love it to be huge somewhere.
Yeah, that would be really nice. Yeah, that's great. So your thinking is going to have 365 small components that'll create this one image, right? That's sort of,
I would like it to. I am aware that I might be biting off more than I can chew. So I was leaving the Daily Reader, because that in itself will take a lot more work, as an optional piece at the end to see where it gets to and where it would be. But to have a really good visualization, it would require about a couple hundred photos to really have it fill out to all the corners of nonviolence.
Yeah, no, that's great. And for all of you, and not just you, Ruth, I mean, you can also think of your project as a work in progress. The way why I'm sort of narrowing it down is that you don't have to have a complete thing to submit to us, but to have a one pointed focus, so that it does look really good. And I think you have that one pointed focus, and it's going to be a work in progress. So you're going to create the handbook, and you can do, maybe you can find a bridge and plaster this on for everybody to see. That would be wonderful. But I also really like the social media, like as a sort of form of resistance to social media itself, on social media. That is a great thing. Yeah. Sharaye, I think you had your hand up first.
Yeah, I want to be the next presenter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So who is the next? Samuel. Yeah, because Samuel, can you switch with Sharaye? I think she's having internet problems. Okay, great. Kara, and then Martin, I think.
Oh, I like this project, and I wondered if you're open to us sending you, if you would send us again your categories, we could participate in sending you photos of things, because my husband works in green building and has built some net zero houses here in Eugene. I could send you some photos of those details. And I'm very interested in hearing about this project because I work with my son who does murals around environmental issues. And I was thinking about trying to integrate the idea of mural work into this. So it's been inspiring to hear about your project.
Oh, I love that. And I would welcome photos. I don't have specific categories. I was trying to show some examples to fill the picture out. But I would love anything that people see and they want to contribute. Please do send in. I think that would be beautiful.
I want to, Ruth, I really appreciate this. The project sounds so exciting. I just wanted to comment that 15 or 20 years ago, American Friends Service Committee had a traveling exhibit that went around the United States and possibly elsewhere that was about peace. And it was a boots on the ground. And it was in a field, there were just empty boots representing, the thousands and thousands of people who had died in wars. And in that particular thing, I think it was American soldiers they were highlighting, but inside they had huge panels. And one thing that I've never forgotten, and I still have it on my computer, was a huge image of a globe, a big round globe. And in it, it was like a puzzle pieces, all these different puzzle pieces that fit together that were necessary for peace. And, it just brought those together. And it was so impactful. I took photographs of it. They had brochures of it. And I'm thinking of your photo mosaic and thinking if you could allow yourself, maybe you can find a group, a big group that would be doing traveling exhibits and would want to incorporate that in a nonviolence display somewhere where they could actually perhaps fund or make it happen that this would be a giant picture so that a lot of people could see it and then relate to it in person as a huge photo mosaic in front of them. Just an idea.
I love that. Thank you for the idea. I was hoping some would trickle in after I presented. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Ruth. That's a really amazing project. I'm so looking forward to to seeing that. Yeah, that's wonderful. And especially the idea of having words as well as pictures all mixed in there. That I think is going to be very powerful. Yeah.
Sephora, could I make one other?
Sure.
Ruth, all your examples were from environmental work, which is an important component, regarding our nonviolence toward the earth. But we'd want to get into the really sticky areas of interpersonal conflict and intergroup conflict all the way on up to the war system. Not that you have to cover all of that, but you have to just tell us a few words about how your specific focus fits into that big picture. So we could use what you're giving us to apply in these other areas.
Okay. I do want to cover all the areas, the sticky ones included. So I want to have it be interpersonal, intercultural, interspecies, us human animals up against nature, conflict areas.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the line I look at, like, where's the conflict? It's what's up against what, and then show a depiction of how that can be okay.
Yep.
How can be nonviolent.
Yeah. And how can this area that you're focusing on be applied in other areas?
Okay.
Yeah. Terrific.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Anne, did you have something to add?
Just a quick thing. It just spurred me with what Michael's response was to you, Ruth. The short story by Ursula Le Guin, Those Who Walked Away from Amalia.
Mm-hmm.
If there could be some
Amelis, yeah.
Amelis, that's so much about justice And if there was some image that could capture what that means, that's what I was thinking. Just starting from some of what we've learned in the class and finding images that speak.
Anyway.
Anyway.
And that's why I was going to use every time I create a photo, I would have to use the thought process of, if I know nothing about nonviolence and I'm in someone else's shoes, will they pull from this photo the same thing my eyes do, my brain does?
Yeah.
So that they see the injustice and the justice that can be done in that shift.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really key point, because sometimes when you're showing images that look like they're, violent kind of images, is that what kind of mess? I mean, maybe you want to just ask some, a friend or somebody, like, what do you see, without prompting them to see what they see, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this will lead to a lot of discussion too, like talking to new people and.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, how does the image change the framework, or how does the framework affect how you see the image? I don't know if you can address that, but that's what you are. Yeah, what you're keeping in mind. Absolutely. Thank you. That's great. Okay, so Sharaye, and then we have Samuel. Sharaye, how's your internet? Hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I think it is awful, so I try to make my presentation as short as possible, so I prefer to turn off my video. The topic which I chose for my course paper is constructive program. Is a part of a nonviolent resistance, which usually ignored by many people. It's so important that even many call it constructive resistance, not just program. I tried to program were applied during the history, and the most important, or better to say, the most famous one is by Gandhi. The story of Salt Marsh or Dandy Marsh. Or in other cases, we have in Brazil, Zapatistas, or again, Charkha in India. Here, the main point is to make a nation or a community independent, particularly about the source of money. I mean, make them self-reliant and help them to find a way to fulfill their needs, daily needs. For example, we can talk about some farmers, or about spinning of clothes. These are the cases we have around the world. But I chose Dandy or Salt Marsh by Gandhi. And I try to show Gandhi's attitude towards constructs, and even the attitudes of some others, scholars or experts, about constructive resistance. Although there are some criticism against Dandy Marsh and Gandhi here, particularly from a feminist side. And they mentioned that why, or better to say, they ask why women did not participate, or better to say, why Gandhi didn't let them to participate in this march. Of course, when I talked to Safura and Professor Nagler, they mentioned that talking about this criticism would be interesting, but I'm not sure I can find enough resources for this part, or not. And as I've told you, constructive programs can be manifested in different forms, such as self-education, farming, or preparing food for our community. It means that those who are in power, they use money or economy in order to exploit a nation or a community. So when we are independent enough, so we can find a way to overthrow that supremacy of those who are in power. And here I use some resources. First, I use my MA thesis because my MA thesis was about Gandhi. And second, there are some books or articles such as an analysis of Gandhi's constructive program based on Galton's theory by Dillon, or Gandhi's constructive program, The Other Side of Civil Resistance by Rigby, and some others. And Professor Knuckler and Safura helped me to find some other resources. I mean, the primary text of Gandhi about a constructive program. I try to analyze, or better to examine this case and find some criticisms or positive points about this this movement, I can say. And of course, we have some other cases in Iran too, such as the tobacco movement. But I'm not sure I can find a linkage between Dandi Marsh and this tobacco movement in Iran. And just this, because I'm afraid about my connection. So that's it. If there's any question or any comments, I'd be happy to listen to you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, God.
Thank you, Shabana.
I'm afraid.
Michael, do you have it?
Well, it's just that I would like to hear about that movement, Shahek. I'm not sure I know about it. I know something about a little bit about nonviolent history in Iran, but I look forward to hearing that.
Generally speaking, it's not really common here in Iran. I mean, nonviolent or peaceful movement. We have tobacco movement, something about less than 100 years ago. In Iran, that because of a very high tax on tobacco, I think it was from the side of the Great Britain. So clergies and people decided to stop using tobacco. That it was a kind of, I'm not sure we can call it, it's a kind of civil resistance, or it was a peaceful method to move or go against a very tyrannical rule. I mean, in those days, tobacco was something that people used every day. So yes,
Shahek,
yes.
I don't need to hear
Yeah.
about it now. I mean, I look forward to seeing it with your presentation.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I made a mistake. So sure.
That's all right.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, Sharia, that sounds wonderful. Constructive, because there's very little that people know about the constructive program. That's a wonderful. I'm wondering though, is this? I know you told me, but tell me again, or tell everybody. This paper. Is it part of your PhD work, or is it an article you're going to publish, or how? What's the?
No, I said I use my MA thesis. I graduated several years ago. My MA thesis was about, it was a comparison study between Gandhi and Mandela and the concept of nonviolence. It was a comparison study. So here in my paper for this course, I use some of the text or some of the points from my MA thesis.
No, I'm saying this paper, what are you writing it for? Like, is it going to be published in a journal, or what are you thinking of? What are you writing it for? What's the reason of it?
Yeah, but I hope so, but I'm not sure about its quality. I work on some part of it in this paper, but about the rest, I'm not sure. I think you should tell me it's worth enough to publish or it's not.
No, the reason I'm asking is that when your paper, if you know the audience, like if you know the end towards which you want to apply the paper, like in how do you bring this knowledge into the world kind of thing, that'll help you write the paper much more clearly also. So have it in mind already, like maybe find some journals that you would like to publish in that already publish this kind of work. And so then you write towards that audience. That'll help you in the writing process. Also, it'll make it much easier. Plus, you'll have a word limit, and you'll have like contours in which to. It'll make your project that much more easier and more focused. Yeah, yeah.
I got it. I got it.
Yeah, and I would also urge you to sort of on the lines of what Michael is saying, if the tobacco movement is in the past, if there's something in the present that you could connect it to, that would be great. So the relevance of the constructive program in the present, right? So how is it being applied today?
We have several peaceful or nonviolent movement recently in Iran, but the problem is that even I talked to some of my professors, we couldn't find any cases any case which is related to constructive program. They were nonviolent, but about constructive program, unfortunately, my answer is no.
But you could propose how it could be applied to these movements. So you are the one then now knowledgeable about the constructive program and the movement in Iran, and you can make the connection. And maybe it's for them to read. Then that's your audience, right? So then you're publishing. Yes. So that could help you also. Yeah.
I see. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other thoughts for Sharaye? Thank you, Sharaye. I'm really glad that your internet connection was good. I think Kaka has.
Thank you so much.
Kaka has a comment or a question.
Yes. Yeah. Welcome.
Yes. Congratulations, Sharaye. I was wondering if you have any idea of maybe I understood wrong your project, or maybe I do not know much of geography, but I was wondering if you were thinking about a south line for your project, like talking about examples from the global south. Is there anything in relation to that, or maybe not?
No. It was just an example. It was just an example.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Michael, we have one more Samuel presenting, and that's the last one. So yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. Samuel, are you ready?
Yes, and also Tiago, we're doing this project together. So, but I don't. Can you allow me to share my screen, Sephora, please?
Yeah.
And me too, please, Sephora.
Thiago, I'm gonna share the one you sent me. So
I can share it from here because I can do a better zoom.
Okay, you're both co-hosts, so either one, whoever wants to.
Maybe it's better to zoom in. Okay, so it's probably you're not reading anything, but don't worry, I will zoom in and we will like pass through everything together. Samuel, can I start and we will complementing each other?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So we're based our final project in two things: a problem and some assumptions that we have. Like the problem we're facing are very big in Brazil. This is just a effort to like circle a problem, a bigger problem, bigger picture. And everything you want to see here, it's like a draft. So we are working on. So don't think this is the final project already done. But so in the problem, we see like Brazil has one of the most violent police in the world. And especially in Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo states, they are especially violent. And Brazilian government is many times the greater perpetrator of violence in many forms to people and planet. And everyone are seeing what we are doing with the Amazon forest here. It's a pity. It's awful. And so the population that are most affected by it and this all forms of violence is also the most economically vulnerable in Brazil, and I think many places in the world. So that's in a shared sense here of helplessness and also an urge to use violence to respond to violence. Adding to that, so there is a lack of references and inspirational contents and practice that presents another way of dealing with conflicts, worldviews, and relationship with people and planet. And especially in Brazil, there's a huge gap of content and books and translations of non-violence content. We have few books in Portuguese that address this concept. And we're based on, you can take.
Just to add something, because me and some friends were doing a documentary as well, and there's another problem. Like here in Brazil, we have a lot of initiatives like all around Brazil, but they're not connected. We don't have a network. We don't have like groups talking about it. And we also have, of course, like everywhere else, but my impression, and I lived in other places, is that here in Brazil, like violence in the media is like superb, you know, like if you go to any pub, any bar, any restaurant, like anywhere you go, we have like those specific like police programs, and like the guys that are the narrator of the program, they have been almost elected, like for, you know, like Thiago and Kaká da Atena, like they promote violence, you know, and they are almost elected. They are worshipped by people. So there is this media problem as well. Go ahead,
Great.
Thiago. Sorry.
Yeah, and there's another problem that's. So the state doesn't offer like things like the service of the state let people with economic vulnerability so alone that things like the church, like the evangelical church, that some kind of church, they are spreading in poor areas of Brazil, and they are so connected to very doubtable politicians here in Brazil, and that's a huge problem here also. And our assumption is that if kids from economically vulnerable families are exposed to nonviolent subjects, practices, and content references, they will grow up as a potential practitioner and influencer of a societal mind shift towards nonviolence. They will be searching for a nonviolent response to state violence their families were suffered once. So this is our assumption, our hypothesis that we want to test. So
yeah, but it's also important, like because there were some projects in schools, like talking about masculinity, feminism, machismo, and nonviolent communication. And in these educational projects, what you can see is like when one of the students start to talk about either nonviolence or violence or machismo, or how the patriarchal and colonialism have like really bad effects on him, like other ones start to share. So there is like it's inside them, you know, like there is a lot of people that wants to talk about it, that wants to behave like it, but if nobody talks about it, the system will be the same, you know, like because by peer pressure and by the culture and by parents and also teachers, they are not I wouldn't say allowed, but they're not incentivado, Thiago.
Incentive.
Yeah, incentivized to talk about it. So when it starts to pop up, so there is like, and it's sort of an assumption, but I have friends done this project and it worked really well. So we're kind of faithful in this assumption.
Great.
Ti, vamos tomar cuidado com o tempo, hein?
Okay. So how much minutes do we still have? How much time do we still have?
You have about 8 minutes, but we want to give you some feedback. So maybe just another 2-3 minutes, if you could.
Okay. I will start to rush. So our main goal is to create a course, like a journey, learning journey. I'm sorry, there's someone with the microphone. Can you mute, please? Okay, thank you. So it's to create a learning journey for public students from public schools in Brazil. And it's a course that aims to sensitize students to another perspective of life and values and attitudes that permeate our relationship and worldview. So we're wanting to offer other possible repertories for social and planetary construction and regeneration based on values and action, such as cooperation, nonviolence, empathy, sustainability, culture of peace. And so the course intends to catalyst in the construction of a more just and peaceful society here in Brazil. And in order to do that, so we want to to have some it's a practical course. It's not a theoretical. So the meditation practices, open conversations, facilitated to merge content with their life experiences. We want to incentivize them to create a final project that puts concepts and practices in their communities. And we want to conduct the classes in a way that forms a learning community, to form the way we want to teach. It's in a community learning, a learning community. So we will put in practice in this community the principles that we want them to learn and experience and share with the world. So Samuel, do you want to explain a little more about the draft of our syllabus? Everything's also a draft for now, but we want to share it with you.
Yeah, just real quick, because I think it's more important to get feedback, and the syllabus we're still working on it. But the idea is to have 20 students from public schools in Brazil. It'll be around 10 workshops with different people, and we're gonna try to. I don't know if I can share my screen real quick. Okay. Okay, so okay, so here we go. So we would start with an introduction to the culture of peace. Then we'll work on a workshop of meditation. Then we'll do empathy and nonviolent communication. Then we're gonna talk, and that's really important for Brazil, like the different aspects of violence, not only direct violence, but structural and economical and all this stuff. Then we're gonna talk about, which is also really important here, about feminism and machismo, and what are their impacts and how do they work in these in schools. Then there is one workshop of nonviolent activism. We have like some friends that used to work in Greenpeace. They have a school of nonviolent activism, which is really nice. Then we'll talk about like conflict resolution and new practices that are starting to pick up here in Brazil, such as conflict mediation and restorative justice and circular practices. Then we're gonna talk about peace on the planet and like carrying capacity, ecocide, permaculture, Gaia theory, and then we'd have what we're calling like the new way, like what's in practice already, like circular economy, responsible production, eco villages, microfinances, the internal happiness from Bhutan and all this stuff. And then like we would end with a final project that would have to be something practical for them to implement in their communities. So there's a lot to go on. I'm still trying to convince Thiago so we can do a smaller version of this year with only 5 workshops. So if you can incentivize Thiago to to work on this smaller version. But yeah, the idea is that for next year to have like this to start this one, but we're still trying to see if we can do a small version of this, of course online, and the idea is in the future we can work with this like in the public schools, which is a little bit hard because it needs lots of knowledge in different areas, so it's easier to gather people online. Yes, so I think that's basically it.
Yes.
Michael?
Wow, this is very, very important, you guys. I'll be getting nonviolence into really critical areas. Now I'm having a senior moment here, and I'm going to have to check, but one of the most important practitioners of nonviolence has been working in Brazil for many, many years. He's from the UK. And I've met
Dominic Barter.
Dominic Barter. Okay, good. Thank you very much. So you've got that. Then the minor piece is that I think the first translation that was done of our film, The Third Harmony, was in Portuguese. I was going to go and try to check that. If you go to the site, Bullfrog Films, there's a CC link that takes you to the translations. And I think, if I remember correctly, things have been happening very fast with that film. But I think the first translation is in Portuguese, done by Gilda Betancourt.
By whom, sorry?
A friend of ours named Gilda Betancourt. She is actually, her family is from the Azores. Yeah, but I should be able to check that, but I'm just too clumsy on my computer to get to it right now. But if you go to Bullfrog Films, look up The Third Harmony, and then look at the translations, you'll see if I was right or not. And if it wasn't, let's make it right.
Yeah, me and Tiago and another friend, we also are starting to develop another project, and it's also based on translation and like creating a library and a network of nonviolence and culture of peace here in Brazil. Because as I said, there is like a lot of like sparse initiatives around Brazil, but we like Chris, which is a friend in common of us. Like she called both of us, and like we want to start to join people and start the movement. I think Galaxy wants to talk, and I don't know who Galaxy is.
I don't know who Galaxy is, but I just want to have a few comments and then we'll let Galaxy speak. I think this is an absolutely wonderful project, both of you. It's like absolutely crucial and wonderful. My two comments would be, I agree with Samuel that not shortened in length, maybe the course, because you have so many different topics to maybe you could do it in a series. And so then you have fewer topics so that it becomes clearer what the nonviolent framework is when you're talking about all of these systemic violences. So you want to make sure that you are not just addressing violence, but the bigger picture that you want them to come out of. So if you have too many topics about that, you'll find it very difficult to clarify the alternatives. So I think maybe just like have a series. So you deal with maybe the Gaia, what does it mean, food culture, with maybe a couple indigenous thing, or put it together in some groups. And then according to how much time and space you get with the workshops, then you can sort of have that. And the second comment I had was about meditation. I think you said you're going to talk about meditation, or you're actually going to do the meditation. I wasn't clear on that.
It's actually both of them, because Tiago came with the idea that we use here, like to always start with a meditation. But there is a friend of mine that she does like workshop of meditation in a like a teenagers prison here. It's called Fundação Casa. It's like I don't know how do you call, but it's a prison for teenagers. So she does this project of meditation. So we also want to have a specific workshop just on meditation to see if they can start, like, because it's the beginning, right? Like to start to focus, and it's important to everything else related to nonviolence. So we want to have a specific workshop and then start all classes with a small meditation.
Yeah, great. That's wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see the syllabus for this. This is really wonderful project. Yeah. And sorry, so you said you're gonna aim at public schools or private schools, or what is
Public school students. I mean, my dream is also to do with private schools so they can pay like the facilitators, and we can do for free for public schools. So that's the future idea. But right now we're gonna just try to fundraise to do this first project, just to get feedback and see what can we improve and all this stuff. And then we wanna call, because we kind of have it's a small network, but we do have, me and Tiago and probably Kaká have a network of people that can join, and like we can spread the course.
Yeah.
So yeah, the idea is because everything came like from when I started to study culture of peace. I came to read a book of Pierre Weil. It's a French that came to live in Brazil. He was the founder of the International University of Peace, and one of his saying, like, it just kept like glued in my mind. He says like, peace was always there, but nobody taught us how to look for it and where to see it. Yeah. So the main idea is like to show people that there's peace around, like a lot of people is practicing. So if we change the focus, maybe we can change our mindset, and maybe we can change the culture. So
yeah, that's great. Wonderful. I think that's Kaká, the Galaxy person. Go ahead.
Yeah, congratulations. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Congratulations, Samuel and Tiago. And I was thinking about two things. I don't know if maybe you thought about that, or you even said something about that, and I was not paying attention. But I was wondering if you were thinking about the local, about what Gandhi called the genius of the local, I guess. Like if you were considering bringing examples of nonviolent actions that happened in Brazil also, like because it can be, at least my experience is that identification is so important on learning and on childhood and adolescence. And so maybe for these Brazilian children and teenagers, so they can know that it's also possible here because it was already made it here. It already happened here also. And it is happening now, for example, with many nonviolent actions that the indigenous women this week are doing, or indigenous nations were doing last and previous week. And this would be a question, but there are many other groups, like how the African religions survived here. For me, is totally, and they survived under a very racist and brutal regime throughout the centuries. It's an example for me of nonviolent resistance also. So maybe my question would be that, and also in this sense, like it would be like, maybe because these are some references, but they're also the references these children and teenagers bring with them in their own lives. And so I'm asking that because, as you know, our education here is so oppressive and repressive, and maybe listening to their intelligence would be a way of, I don't know. And the last question would be like, are you considering working with a trauma perspective? Because that was the reality. I know that is the reality I know from working and living in these places. There's a lot of trauma, and maybe caring about that can be very important, and careful for yourselves and for the children and teenagers. But mainly, thank you so much, and super congratulations for your beautiful, beautiful project. And I really would like to support as I can, if I can, in any way.
Thank you, Kaka. So the first question, it's yes, the answer. So we, as much as we like and it's possible, and we want to present Brazilian and local examples. We have some examples of nonviolence in Brazil. They are very little reported. So we had a main strike in São Paulo that started the Queixadas movement. That is very important nonviolence resistant movement that happens in Brazil, and they were inspired by Gandhian nonviolence, and they called how they called it's they didn't call nonviolence, they called permanent affirmation, firmeza permanente. I don't know how to translate that. And yeah, and we have a military person that was act in a nonviolent way in like early 30s in Brazil, that is called Rondon. He was a mission. He had the mission to open up lines through the interior of Brazil in the Amazon forest, and instead of fighting indigenous people, he make alliance with them and value them and protect them. and no one knows about this in Brazil. Like very few people know that in Brazil. And he was once considered the Brazilian Gandhi. And so, yes, we have many examples that we want to bring in. And for your second question, we didn't thought about trauma, but it's a very good suggestion. Maybe I can talk more of that with Samuel, and we can bring an issue about that and a subject about that. But thank you so much. And it's a nonviolent principle when you consider the intelligence of the local. I think it's Swadeshi.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, local is very important. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, this idea of people don't know about it, but it's there. And so it's such an obvious thing that not only do the media not cover it, but sometimes it's so obvious that people don't even recognize it, don't even label it with nonviolence, right? So you want to point to that this is also part of nonviolence. It's just people living day to day. That is also nonviolence, right? People living peacefully with each other is also negotiate. What was the name of the leader you just said? The Brazilian Gandhi? What was the name?
Rondon. I will write here in the chat.
Okay. All right. I mean, I've given up looking at the time and there's no problem because you had two people presenting, so that I didn't know that both of you were doing a joint project. And thank you so much for that wonderful project. Any final thoughts for Samuel and Tiago? Ruth?
That sounds so great. I can't wait to see more of it. And I just had a connection in my head that I wonder if Brad could help as a tie-in for trauma-informed nonviolent practices, because it sounded as though from his presentation that that's something of his background and what he's looking to use. I don't know if he could be of any resource.
Yeah, me and Tiago didn't discuss the issue of trauma still, but like for online workshops, I think it's a really delicate thing, like to start work and like they're not giving support and all this stuff. And I don't know, I think it's really hard to, like here in Brazil, like on an online workshop, just like for 2 hours to work with trauma and bring a lot of things up, and then have to shut down the workshop and I not give assistance. I don't know. I don't know. We still have to talk about it, but I don't know, Tiago. I think it's like really delicate. We don't have backgrounds on social service and psychology trauma. I think I don't know. I think it should have be another project with like some really specific professionals that knows how to handle it, and just to bring up and like, I don't know.
Can I add something to this, Samuel?
Please.
When I asked that, maybe I was confused. I was not meaning that you were going to offer any kind of specialized treatment, but I was asking more in the direction of being aware that there is a lot of trauma, and like taking care, like I guess Stephanie used a word like with Ayatashi, like remembering to be more sensitive than the normal, because many things happen there in all of the world, but in public schools, in the periphery, and in poor spaces, a lot of things that can provoke re-traumatizations to these children and teenagers. So it was more in relation to your awareness. I don't know if now it's maybe more less confused. I don't know.
Yeah. One of the issues we've discussed already is like the need for us to find specific people for specific workshops. Like, for example, me and Tiago, we cannot speak about feminism and like structural racism, you know. So we're gonna find specific people to talk about different issues that can like really talk and handle the traumas and all this stuff. So if I got it right, yes, we're thinking about it.
Okay. Any other final thoughts or? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much to everybody for presenting and for staying on so long as well. That's wonderful. And so see you Wednesday. Yeah. Thank you for all of your contributions to everybody's project. That's wonderful.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That was great.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you and congratulations, everyone. Bye bye.